Attention Talking Simpsons listeners, we have a new podcast miniseries exclusively on Patreon right now.
For $5 and up subscribers at patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons, you get Talk King of the Hill Season 2, Part 1.
That's right, we're returning to King of the Hill once again, putting out 11 new episodes covering the first half of the show's second season. Again, that is patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons. Be there or be not right.
I heartily endorse this event or product.
Ahoy hoy everybody, and welcome to Talking Simpsons, the only podcast with rack and peanut steering. I'm one of your hosts, the born in wedlock Bob Mackey, and this is our chronological exploration of The Simpsons. Who else is here with me today in the same room?
Hey, it's Henry Gilbert, and this is the podcast for the common man.
And who is our special guest on the line?
Hello, it's Chris Wade.
And this week's episode is Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Oh, brother, where art thou?
Take it easy, buddy. They moved across the street.
Oh, sorry.
This week's episode aired on February 21st, 1991, and as always, Henry will tell us what happened on this mythical day in real world history.
Oh boy, Bobby. Phil Collins' Another Day in Paradise wins at the Grammys. The ridiculous film Scenes from a Mall is released to very bad reviews, and Katie Couric joins the Today Show as co-host. So, a big day in 1991. I don't know if you guys know the film Scenes from a Mall.
I know the Itchy and Scratchy parody Screams from a Mall.
well, that one doesn't have Woody Allen in it, but it's basically like if a guy hired Woody Allen to be in a film that's like a Woody Allen film, except it's all filmed in a mall, and Woody Allen is like he's kind of a yuppie, which is not. It's like Woody Allen is cast against type. It's all wrong. It's just all wrong.
That was back when Woody Allen was allowed near malls and schools.
Yes.
I mean, here's a question: has Woody Allen ever been in a mall just of his own accord?
Boy, I would think not. I would think he's other than for filming that film with Bette Midler.
Unless there is a mall in Manhattan somewhere, like a suburban mall somewhere that just transplanted, then I would say no.
There's like kind of a fake mall in Herald Square, but I can't really imagine him going to that. I always imagine him basically not leaving the Upper East Side or Upper West Side unless he's making a movie.
Well, Barbara Streisand, she has her own mall that like on her property. Like she built a mall where in her home. He could have visited her and gone to that mall.
Is that an Oprah thing too, or is these just urban legends?
The Oprah one I don't know about. I know Barbara Streisand has her own mall. I do know.
Henry, that's a great point. If I can imagine Woody Allen having ever gone to a mall, I can more easily imagine him going to Barbara Streisand's fake mall in her basement than a real like salt of the earth mall.
Like she offers reasonable prices.
Him just walking through a JCPenney's, like what would that even be? It feels like I'm setting up an improv scene. I am not. No.
And that Phil Collins song, it may surprise you, but Paradise is being used ironically. It's about the plight of the homeless. Have you seen that depressing music video?
Oh, yes.
On VH1, probably 5 times a day at this point in history.
True. And Katie Couric, she was the smiling face. My home was a Today Show home. That's what my mom would put on in the morning in the bedroom when she was getting ready to go to work, and on Thanksgivings. It's hard for me not to think of a Thanksgiving of my childhood not hearing Katie Couric's voice talk about Thanksgiving things and setting up the parade. And that's a New York institution as well, just like Woody Allen. And of course, she is about to release a new book that is full of a bunch of bullshit defending Matt Lauer, but we don't want to talk about that. But hey, welcome to our guest, Chris Wade, for this classic episode.
Yes, Chris Wade, the producer of Chatboy Trap House and the co-host of his own podcast, Hell of Presidents, with our friend Matt Chrisman.
Yes, hello. It's great to be here. Great to finally be here. As we were talking about before we record, I have been chuckling in the background of several of your episodes with Matt on them, as I am usually the one who is manning the knobs on the recorder when Matt needs to record because he can't do it himself.
On Trash of the Titans, I believe listeners heard you weigh in on U2 and
yes. I did weigh in on U2. I was in a big U2 thinking about U2 kick around that time. I believe that's around when I saw them at MSG.
And Hella Presidents is a lot of fun. It's a really fun history podcast to just hear you and Matt wax about the history of America through the lens of the presidency. Is a really fun podcast.
Thanks, guys. I'm having a lot of fun doing it. It's actually a good overlap for this episode because I'm currently finishing up the script segment for our recording next week on the H.W. Bush administration, during which this episode takes place.
That's perfect.
Henry and I are also podcast producers, and we really appreciate your expert use of clips and sound effects.
Well, you got to put those in for the podcast.
I believe you're pals with some of our other friends in the We Hate Movies podcast because you've had them on at your amazing Frequency Festival.
Oh, yes. Me and Steven go way back in the, bumming around the New York improv and sketch comedy scene. I've known of those guys for a long, long time. In fact, We Hate Movies is one of the first podcasts that I listen to like regularly. I mean, those guys have been at it for a decade or more. They're great. I love We Hate Movies.
Oh, that's awesome. And so Chris, I mean, what you expertly put in Simpsons clips in Chapo from time to time, and I have to think you have a lot of experience with The Simpsons growing up, I would bet.
Like any person my age, I am very, very familiar with it, but it honestly was never one of my like key touchstones. My golden era of watching The Simpsons was probably like season 5 through season 11, which is a good time to be watching The Simpsons. But the earlier seasons were, I definitely wasn't watching them as they came out and was mostly just picking them up in reruns, though I did have that like book, The Simpsons Encyclopedia, that really covers like every episode from the first 5 or 6 seasons in depth. And so honestly, for the first like 2 or 3 seasons, the way that I know them more is like reading the official Simpsons guide of these episodes like many, many times before I actually saw them. And I've probably only seen most of the first 3 or 4 seasons, maybe once or twice. Like this is definitely the first time I've seen this episode in 20 years or something. So, and to be honest, when it came out, I then immediately was more of a Futurama guy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you were not part of the Bart Mania devotees in the 90, 91?
I was not doing the Bartman, though I was enjoying The Simpsons a little later.
You wanted to be like Bender in your early 20s.
Yes, exactly.
That encyclopedia, the Simpsons Amazing Colossal, I say it every time, that's the Mystery Science Theater one, sorry. But the Simpsons episode guide, I think, was like given as a gift to most of us at some point by a parent.
I bought it, and this explains why I do this job. I thought it was kind of a ripoff because I was like, all this stuff is free online. All these episode guides, I can just go online and read them for free. So I was like, I wasted $15 at Walden Books.
But they don't have the level of graphic design
that's true.
that book has.
It's a very pretty book.
Yes.
Well, I guess too, I always curious like how this informed, your politics as well as a series. Like
that's a good. I mean, I guess to me, The Simpsons has always more been an interesting crystallization, especially in the first like decade of its run, of a certain kind of like Gen X aesthetic. I find it more interesting as like a guide to a type of culture and people of a certain age than I find it like actually shaping my own politics. But yeah, I think that kind of acerbic take on and just the general worldview of everything being stupid and then just trying to do the best that you can inside a stupid world, probably the most that it has affected my general life philosophy. And I think that is something, I was thinking, and we'll get more into that especially these really early seasons have in it, that kind of melancholy outlook on the world in general, but, trying to find at least your own little spot of goodness within it.
That's good. That's a good way of looking at it. I agree. Well, this episode is an interesting one, that it is a very like star-driven episode that also even on the commentary that they recorded like 15 years ago, they're not reflecting like incredibly kindly on it. I think they like this one, look, the writers of it, but I think they also kind of feel like they wrote it very hastily and it's full of like some filler that they just cop to, like, oh yeah, that scene's filler, that scene's filler.
Yeah, and I guess the idea of a long lost brother is, boy, the series is getting out of hand, isn't it?
Yeah.
Even in
season 2.
Yeah, I know. This is the type of thing that, by the 6th or 7th season, they would goof on. They'd be like, "And who said long lost triplets?"
Yeah.
Like it's just such a stock and formulaic story that they don't that later seasons would start with that stock story and play with it more. But in this case, it really is a pretty straight ahead sitcom plot of a long lost relative played by a famous person, and then by the end of the episode they are gone with hopefully to never be seen again, because it would disrupt the entire world of the series.
And the very bizarre title, this was 9 years before the Coen Brothers movie in 2000, and it comes from the Preston Sturges movie, Sullivan's Travels.
Yes.
And that is the name of the book the main character is adapting into his like high art movie he wants to make, and he's traveling amongst the common people to observe them and be informed by their stories before he realizes they just want to see a pie in the face.
Yeah, people want
they
to
want
have
low
fun.
art.
Yeah, that's so. What a funny. You can see why the Coen Brothers also loved that movie. I mean, and like Preston Sturges, the Coens owe a lot to him, or you can tell they took a lot from him. But for Jeff Martin to name it that, like was a very urbane and deep comedy reference to make in 1991 that most people didn't get. And now when you hear Homer scream the title in the episode, you just think of the George Clooney movie about hobos in the South.
Except Jeff Martin's title has an H in it because you couldn't just go into Wikipedia and say what was the name of that thing he was adapting. I guess it was this, and then they just write it as the title.
As Martin recalled it on the commentary, that he sounded like he was told, we need an episode really soon. He put together an outline as a pitch, and Sam Simon liked it so much he's like, write this right now. And he just I believe the normal timeline is outline, and then you're given your script and you go away from the office for a week and write your script and come back the next week with your first draft. But Martin said he had to write the entire first draft over a weekend, and it was very, very rough. And he completely cops to like, the Are We There Yet? The pork chops, all these things just are fillers on a page to get to a page count. And same with like songs.
The one that really stuck out for me is the kind of Marge subplot of her being like, is this going to spoil the kids? And that not really going anywhere.
Yes, yeah. There should be a moment where the kids are now disappointed they won't be spoiled anymore, but there's no more story to that.
Yeah, the kids are largely unaffected by this.
Yes. Also from Martin's description of it, it's hard to tell where DeVito came in. At first I thought it was like they thought Danny DeVito wants to do this, and then we wrote a script for him. But the haste of writing the script in the Long Lost Brother thing, now it sounds more like to me that they wrote that script and they said, who could be Homer Simpson's brother? And they said, well, we know Danny DeVito and he's great, so let's have him be that.
I think this is the first time Danny DeVito plays an animated character that does not look like Danny DeVito.
That's true.
He's playing an attractive character, which is why the voice kind of seems wrong coming out of the clone Homer's mouth, the more attractive Homer mouth.
Yes.
I kind of love DeVito's voice performance in this. I find that it's like just modulated enough away from the actual DeVito voice to feel like a real character, and I think that I don't know. It came across really well to me. I was really enjoying hearing it.
Well, and we love Danny DeVito. Like, he's
of course.
Great. Everybody loves him. I think now he could come back and it'd be a whole new level of fandom coming in. It'd be all the Always Sunny fans and younger who just know him as like, that old little guy meme. Like, that's like...
The guy coming out of the couch?
Yes.
That's Homer's brother?
I mean, honestly, that would be a great concept for a season 35 episode of The Simpsons, is reconnecting with Homer's brother, and he now works at a bar in Philadelphia with 4 deadbeats.
I think, and also in your world, Chris, have you ever come in contact with DeVito? Because he's a more left-wing celebrity in the Bernie sphere. I know he did like campaign events for Sanders.
There was a moment, I think, when we were like trying to pull on some threads to get him on the show, but it never really came together. And also, just that it's always a tantalizing offer or possibility of being like, DeVito's kind of a lefty and he's also great. We love everything that he does. We should have him on the show. But then you actually like realize what that would entail, and you're like, but to do what,
Just to compliment him, to say like, you're great.
Exactly.
Did you just do the Chris Farley show?
I was going to say, what turned into the Chris Farley show?
Yeah, you're half of that half a movie. Underrated.
Well, so, I don't want to do a full history of Danny DeVito himself, but I was curious what his relationship to The Simpsons was. And really, it is just he and James L. Brooks and also Sam Simon have a long working relationship together. But specifically with Brooks, like, they were thick as thieves when this aired in 1991. So, many people may know this, Danny DeVito's breakout role. He is in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and he has like a bunch of small roles, and he also was like, a filmmaker in his own right in the 70s. Like, he did short films and interesting experimental stuff. But his big breakout role was in 1978 when James L. Brooks and Sam Simon cast him on Taxi as the mean boss, and it was perfect, like one of the most perfectly cast roles ever. Like, he's amazing. Like, that Taxi is a really underrated just like ensemble cast. And also on Taxi, DeVito even directed a few episodes, and it was the start of his work as a filmmaker, as a film director. And DeVito would be in James L. Brooks's big movie Terms of Endearment in 1983. And then in 1989, DeVito's biggest directorial film, War of the Roses, to that point, that was made with Gracie Films. It's a Gracie film, executive produced by James L. Brooks. So him and Brooks were really good buddies at that time. And I also recall that in 2011, I wish I'd have gone to this, but pals of mine went to it at the San Francisco Sketch Fest. James L. Brooks did like a retrospective on Broadcast News, which, like, that's a fine movie, but you can see why I didn't go like, oh, one ticket right now. But when my friends who went to it, they said the reason to have gone was not to watch Broadcast News, but to see Danny DeVito interview James L. Brooks. And DeVito was just going all off script. Like, they said that he told some story about, like, oh yeah, some unnamed cast member on Broadcast News was doing coke, and he's like, we were all doing coke back then. It was the 80s. And James L. Brooks just like putting his face in his hand, like, oh my God, Danny, don't tell these stories. Like, that sounded so awesome, and I was really sad. So it is possible to assume that Danny DeVito and James L. Brooks have enjoyed Coca-Cola together. I don't want to.
Speaking of Cocaine DeVito and the 80s, I want to relay this story that I heard recently, which is something I didn't know, that Michael Douglas and Danny DeVito were roommates in New York in the late 70s. And as DeVito was breaking on Taxi, and Douglas was still trying to get his career going as both a producer and a star, DeVito actually paid for their apartment, I believe, while Douglas was still trying to get his shit together.
I would love if Michael Douglas was the messy one.
Yes.
You gotta pick your towel off the floor, Michael.
Come on. Man, that's a movie. That is a movie right there. We're getting all these old guy movies now. Like, have those two guys in a movie now as roommates in their 80s. And yeah, I mean, DeVito coming on in Bartmania totally makes sense, like, that he would say yes to it. And
I think at this time he was directing Hoffa, or maybe he finished directing it, but it came out in 92, so he would have been working on some process of the movie at this point.
Oh yeah. I'm sure someday we'll return to the sequel episode that he's in, but that would be he would appear one other time in the series, DeVito, in a one-off cameo joke in a season 24 episode where Homer sets up a joke of we don't abandon our family in The Simpsons, and then their answering machine goes off and it's a call from Herb saying he needs help again and he's broke one more time, and Homer hangs up on it and turns it off. So that's the one other time DeVito has been on the show. It's really they gotta bring him back.
Yeah. I mean, there's only so much time left for DeVito in The Simpsons. Well, never mind. It's more about DeVito than The Simpsons.
DeVito will live forever. I choose to believe that.
Short men, they last a long time.
Hey, I take that pitch that I just gave. Do this Always Sunny crossover. I mean, apparently both these shows are going to run forever, so they should intersect at some point.
It is amazing to me that Always Sunny is it'll just quietly go to season 28 and we'll just be like, oh wow, I guess it never stopped. How do you like that?
I mean, I really admire those guys' commitment to just, no matter where their careers go, just keep doing a 6-season a 6-episode or 8-episode season every year. I mean, it seems like they all still really love it. And, whenever I don't watch every episode of Always Sunny, but whenever I check in, it's still at least entertaining. And it's always so fun to see all those guys just doing whatever, like in the same, in the same frame. So
Yeah.
Whereas, each new season of The Simpsons greenlight feels like, a knife going into your back. Each new season of Always Sunny, all I can think of is like, you know what? Good for them.
Yeah, I guess nobody pulled a Shelley Long and thought, I'm too good for this. I'm going to make Troop Beverly Hills and I'll show you.
It seemed like Glenn might leave, and then he didn't leave. Like they even wrote a thing to write him off because he got, he got AP Bio, and then the next season they teased that he isn't coming back, and then he came back, which is great.
The Simpsons will be right back.
35 years ago, Homer's dad had an illegitimate son.
Since I'm the one you kept, that must mean you really love me.
Interesting theory.
And when the Simpsons track him down,
Grab the next plane to Springfield. We got a couch that folds out.
I'll tell you what. Why don't you come here?
they're gonna get a big surprise.
A millionaire? No, I kept the wrong one.
Danny DeVito guest stars
Unky Herb, can I spit over the side?
Knock your brains out.
on an all-new Simpsons Thursday.
Oh, got him!
Welcome to the break, everybody, for the podcast that's powerful like a gorilla, but soft and yielding like a Nerf ball. And a big thank you to our guest this week, Chris Wade. You know, we love all his work on not just Chapo Trap House, but also his Stitcher premium podcast, Hell of Presidents with Matt Christman, and his other podcast, And Introducing, all about music. It's really great. Please check out all the cool stuff Chris Wade does out there. And if you enjoy this podcast, you should really check out all the cool stuff we do at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. This podcast is only possible thanks to subscribers there who let me and Bob do this as our full-time job. If you sign up there today for just $5 a month, you get access to every episode of Talking Simpsons a week ahead of time and ad-free. You can hear next week's episode right now if you sign up. And you also get access to a giant collection of exclusive podcasts only for Patreon subscribers. Our monthly Talking Futurama podcast, where we're covering every episode of Futurama. We're deep into season 3 now. And also, coming at the end of this month, our Blabbing About Batman the Animated Series podcast, where we're covering our 10 favorite episodes of BTAS. You can only hear that and so much more if you are a $5 and up subscriber at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. But if you want something as luxurious as a car called Persephone, then you need to sign up at the $10 premium level at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. As you may know, we have a sister podcast, What a Cartoon, and once a month we do our premium $10 podcast, What a Cartoon Movie, where we cover an animated feature film super in-depth like we do The Simpsons and What a Cartoon. Just last month we covered The Road to El Dorado, an underrated DreamWorks film. The end of this month, the controversial at the time, Batman Beyond: Return of the Joker, a whole bunch about that classic film and the troubles it had getting released. And not to mention a giant back catalog that covers things like The Lion King, A Goofy Movie, Shrek, Beavis and Butthead Do America, and so much more. Please sign up at that $10 level to get all those What a Cartoon movies, over 200 hours of them, plus all the $5 things I just mentioned. One more time, check it all out at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. I guess this chalkboard gag with Bart that starts it out, I couldn't find anything about the Florida real estate market that it could be referencing.
I think it's just broadly referring to the idea of selling people a lot of land in Florida, it turning out to be unusable swampland. Some of these board gags, Chris, have been very specific about things happening at that moment in time, things that we've all forgotten about. This one I don't think has been.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just the concept of real estate in a far-off place that might be a scam.
Well, now that market's totally totally underwater. Hey, hey.
They're still building down there.
But then we come into the episode with it feels like, if not the first, like one of the first, where you don't see the family situated as we're watching, the family is watching a thing. It just starts as a full misdirect of a movie that is playing.
And this was the first McBain written, but the second one to air.
Yeah. So I was looking at the episode production numbers, and so the first McBain to air, the one in The Way We Was, where he pushes his captain out of the window.
That makes two of us.
Yeah. But yeah, Gene on the commentary says they wrote this McBain first and then retroactively put it into that, which the production numbers do not reflect that, but it definitely was a time of concurrent episode writing, but then production number is more of the animation team being given the scripts.
And we talked about it last time we covered this episode and other episodes. There are 5 McBain clips in the first 4 seasons. If you piece them together, they are parts of the same movie. And we're seeing the ending of McBain here.
Yes.
But we'll see another encounter with Mendoza in another episode, I believe in season 4.
Yes, yeah. In season 4, he fights Senator Mendoza in the last exit to Springfield. That's the one where it is this giant shoot up, much bloodier than this one. I feel like that's why in Last Exit to Springfield the shootout is so crazy, because they're like, well, we already got away with that one, let's get even bloodier in this season 4 one. And yeah, we see the most classic McBain scene is the death of Scully and the screaming of Mendoza.
But you hear the name Mendoza in every one of these, and then you see him twice. So this is the same story because Mendoza dies.
This is the defeat of Mendoza, which that makes it even better. Were this to have been experienced in the order they wrote it, that the first McBain scene is the end of McBain, and then every future time you see McBain, you see scenes that happen before it. That's pretty funny.
And I think Mendoza probably lives the 40-story fall into the gas truck to survive for the McBain sequel.
We were talking about high concept episode pitches like the Always Sunny one. I think a great one could be just make this movie. Just make this movie as a 22-minute episode, a parody of 80s action films. I think it'd be great.
Yeah. It's like when they wrote this, then they were mocking current action films, and now when they would do it to do the same style, it would be a throwback episode and an kind of like We Love the 80s type gag.
I always pictured McBain as specifically a riff on Arnold and Commando.
His jokes are Commando level jokery. Like also in Running Man, he is quite a quipster. Arnold is, but I guess Commando is probably his jokiest film.
Yeah, I also really appreciate in this McBain clip it's literally 1 second. I had to go back and pause it just to clock it. With the pan up from the map that Mendoza is looking at of Central America with 2 circular arrows showing the flow, and one is just labeled money and the other is labeled drugs.
It's perfect.
They needed that visual aid, and this is the first time I noticed that it's a monitor they're looking at, because when McBain comes out of it, there's electricity crackling around his gun in a really cool touch.
Yeah, that's a really cool like After Effects-y kind of thing on that electricity too. I like it a lot. Yeah, the boardroom of guys is a really great design of like all these different evil freaks sitting around the board. It's funny because we then have a boardroom scene later in the episode too that's more about them being stupid than evil, but. And yeah, I also think in classic action movie terms, Mendoza picks up that gun just to give McBain the slightest of justification of self-defense. It's like, oh no, see, Mendoza had a gun, so it's okay that McBain murdered this guy who is like half his size, really.
And also a U.S. senator.
Yeah, he just explodes. Oh God. I mean, I have a clip of the end of McBain here that then goes into Abe's reaction to it, but just Hank Azaria's scream all the way down is just amazing here.
Meeting adjourned.
$2.50 for this?
What a chip.
He certainly broke up that meeting.
Right now, I'm thinking about holding another meeting in bed.
Oh, McBain.
The rules that constrain other men mean nothing to McBain. other men.
The screen was too small.
The floor was sticky.
The romantic subplot felt tacked on.
In short, we demand a refund.
Sorry, it's against our policy.
No policy, you.
Hey, don't have a heart attack, old dude.
Don't you tell me what do you, young whipper snapper.
I'm shocked Abe survived this. I guess he'd have worse heart attacks. If you ride the Simpsons ride, you get to watch Abe have a heart attack and an aneurysm while getting the safety instructions. So,
but this McBain theme, written by Jeff Martin, it's like a 45-second song. You hear maybe 15 seconds of it before they leave and talk over it. It's all on the first album of Simpsons songs, I believe.
Actually, it is Go Simpsonic with the Simpsons.
Second one.
I have the copy of it right here. That's how I checked it. Yeah. The song is called Blessed Be the Guy That Bounds.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And this great like Shirley Bassey style McBain theme. Jeff Martin writes it. You barely hear it in the episode, but he talks about it on the commentary going to the recording. There's a 50-piece orchestra playing his McBain theme. It was one of the best moments of his life.
I mean,
amazing.
It's amazing they got. Yes, Chris, let me show off to you right now. Actually,
do you have the
So here's the album for Go Simpsonic with the Simpsons, and here is the original cover art for it by artist Bill Morrison.
Wow, that's a good piece of Simpsons ephemera.
Bob has some other great Simpsons original art by Bill Morrison.
There was a Bill Morrison sale recently.
Yeah, but I looked into it as well. The singer of the song is uncredited in the episode, but on the CD it names her. It's Sally Stevens. She is one of these session singers who's just been in like a million movies. She's still working at 81 years old.
Wow.
Like she has credits on IMDb from Dr. Zhivago to Guardians of the Galaxy 2.
And it sounds like she sings the Homer Carr song at the end of the episode. It's the same singer, it sounds like.
Yes, yeah. And
get them in and have for one session and have them do both. That just makes sense.
And
I'm now looking at songs in the key of Springfield on vinyl on eBay, which is only $12, which actually seems like a steal for that.
Yeah.
That's absolutely worth it in framing. You know, I need to get a vinyl. If they ever put a vinyl one out of Simpsonic, I got to get that and put that on the wall. I'll put it on my wall.
Is this the first pimply teen? But he's very assertive.
Yes. Yeah, this is not a squeaky voice teen. I think this is the first pimply voice teen, though. No, Principal Charming. That guy, the servant for Seymour Skinner, is another like proto squeaky voice teen.
Right. We're sneaking him in. It's the idea that like all of our service jobs are run by pimply teens.
But
yes.
But they haven't discovered Dan Castellaneta's perfect teen voice that will overtake all other teen characters they write. Also, real quick, Sally Stevens, she has two other big Simpsons credits as well. She, after you hear this song, it's very obvious she is also the singer of the Hank Scorpio theme.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
Scorpio. And if you remember at the end of Homer They Fall, the boxing episode, the song People Who Need People, she's the one singing the cover to that. So, though, you know that You Have the Right to Remain Dead has never come out in the world of Simpsons. We've never seen McBain 2.
That's no less ridiculous than No Time to Die.
Yeah, yes.
Which is a real Bond movie.
That is, yeah.
Which it's now been delayed 5 years.
I would say Quantum of Solace is a sillier name than You Have the Right to Remain Dead. But,
that's definitely the most self-parodying Bond title, I think.
But we'll never see that movie. It's never coming out.
I want to see Lionel Hutz write it as No Time to Die. I always think that when I see that title, it's like, oh, that's a typo.
But I also like, as a fun afternoon for Abe and Jasper, they go to a movie, watch it in its entirety, and then complain to the manager about it and see if they can get a refund. I bet they do that every weekend. I bet that's just their normal weekend outing.
I like complaining about the plot insufficiencies of the movie rather than just the the facilities of the movie theater.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the romantic subplot felt tacked on. Thus, you owe us $250 back. Which I guess them saying $250, like that was not the price of a first run movie back then. So it seems to imply they're at a second run movie theater as well.
Second run matinee senior discount.
Oh,
that's
boy.
how you get down to the $250.
And so after that heart attack, we cut to the Simpsons at dinner. Homer gives a prayer validating nuclear nuclear power.
No fatalities in this country.
Yeah, which I looked that up. According to Wikipedia, there were dozens of deaths in nuclear power accidents in Spain, the United Kingdom, the USSR up to then. But they're also named like multiple ones of like, oh, these are disputed ones in America before 1991. I was like, well, then we killed them too. We just didn't. But by our count, we didn't.
Well, look, here's what I got to ask about those. Because you know what? He's right. Nuclear power is good. But, what were those deaths by the actual nuclear power, or did like somebody fall off a ladder?
It seems some were like extreme radiation poisoning. Yeah.
I'll hold my mouth for those.
Well, I would say the safety of it has probably improved in the last 30 years. You don't hear as Fukushima, but that was an earthquake. Yeah. And actually, Homer's nuclear prayer reminded me of a funny update to a story I told previously on here. So listeners on the Burns for Governor episode may recall I mentioned that there was a listicle published by the Department of Energy in 2018 about how all the things the Simpsons get wrong about nuclear power and it kept referencing things, from that episode. And since then, I have to give compliments to a Vice article digging into that because just a couple months ago, back in July, writer Aaron Gordon at Vice tried to get to the bottom of who wrote that article, and they had to do a Freedom of Information Act request and got a heavily redacted by the government article back from them about how it's made. It's people should just look up the whole article. It's amazing. But so the Department of Energy is very protective of who wrote that listicle about the Simpsons and nuclear power. But yes, Homer then gets called away. The kids do a pantomime bit, which definitely feels like a Graining Life in Hell comic strip to me.
Yeah, it's also a time killer too.
Oh, yeah.
As we talked about earlier.
Lisa's face when she goes crazy, like that just is a Matt Groening drawing to me, it looks like. Yeah.
I find the kids very sweet in this episode. I know that a lot of their bits don't really go anywhere, but I find their presence to be... They're definitely in the background of the plot for this episode, but I just I found them to be very cute. In all their little interactions.
Yeah, Lisa's having fun, and I guess in a future episode she'd be looking into the labor market of this car company or whatever. How the rights are going and things like that. But here she just wants to watch cartoons with her uncle.
Or just the opulence of it would make her feel bad. Of like, oh, why do you have so much when others have so little? Ilky her, like, yeah. But here they're just fun kids having fun, goofing with each other at the table. And I mean, as a little kid, it gave me ideas of like, oh yeah, me and my brother would do that at the dinner table. Or this is how we would goof off and mess with our parents while not breaking the rules. That is cute.
Also, just on the faces that you were just mentioning, like the Graining Life in Hell drawing, I'm sure you guys have probably already talked about it on the show. Did you guys see that Twitter comment the other day or the other week about in the earlier seasons of The Simpsons, the eyes don't focus directly? Like they don't, the pupils in the eyes don't look at exactly what they're supposed to be looking at, and it makes everything a little more comedic.
Yeah. No,
I thought that was a good observation. And while I was watching these, because it was the first time in a little bit that I'd gone back to some early seasons episodes, I just kept looking at the pupils of everybody's eyes and seeing how they were all slightly unfocused or not in direct line with what they're looking at. And you know what? It is funny.
It is, yeah. They reined in a lot of the quirks like that. And I did call out a few moments in my notes of the walleye, like when Homer goes, oh my God, on the phone, his eyes are just bugging out. The pupils are pointing in different directions. I mean, it's mostly done with Homer because he is just a vacant, dumb character. But it could be used to great effect on other characters as well. But yeah, I totally agree with you. The eyes are too under control in later episodes.
Oh, these days, everybody is, they're just everything's too under control. But the eyes especially, it's like Homer can't. There's lines in here where just for a word for emphasis, the eyes will bulge like what? Or there's later in the episode when Marge says, "Oh, Homer, it was an idle threat." Like her head kind of like squashes and squishes around in just a very funny way.
I think it's the result of obviously things are getting cheaper. There's less time for these flourishes, but also with things getting cheaper, they're also afraid when we send this overseas, they might think this is an accident and try to correct it. It'll come back worse and we'll have to pay for retakes. So it's all a result of just the show getting cheaper.
I love the great joke of Homer was like, the hospital, yellow. Like that's great, and that is his arcade video game catchphrase, according to the startup for the arcade. Yellow.
We're still in the yellow era of Homer.
But they head to the hospital. They find out that Abe only had a mild arrhythmia, not a full heart attack. They say it on the commentary, and I double-checked this to be sure. Dr. Hibbert had appeared 4 previous times in the series to this episode. And while he would sometimes, make a pleased noise, he did not chuckle in reaction to something. This is the first time Dr. Hibbert chuckled, his classic...
But he is laughing appropriately in this case.
In this case, yeah, it is. He is laughing at like that Abe is he'll outlive us all, you old goat. But I like how mean. Like Abe needs to be mean. We're gonna do Old Money recording soon too, and in that one, he's just too sweet. He's too I prefer this Abe who's just like an asshole.
He's like an astute old man who quotes Rudyard Kipling. Sorry, Chris.
Oh, I was just gonna say the revelation about Abe's past in this episode is genuinely very dark,
Yeah.
and I did not remember that being part of Simpsons canon at all.
Yeah, in a few episodes, we're asked to care about him and his girlfriend. Not knowing this part of his past too.
Yeah.
Like this old man deserves love, even though he cheated on his wife and has an illegitimate child.
Yeah, impregnated a prostitute Carney,
and is cruel to Homer at every turn as well. Like I also love another great stupid Homer joke is 80-plus-year-old father who just had a heart scare says, "I'm going to die someday," and Homer's like, "Oh, you and your imagination." Like Homer really does live in this childish world that he's like, "Well, my father could never die." No. But yes, this gave Abe a moment to tell Homer something he'd never told him before, which this also is just this gets darker than most sitcoms would, but it is a very sitcom setup of, thanks to this health scare, I am going to tell you a thing that I would never have told you before, thus making it a new plot for this episode. And Homer learns a shocking secret in this next clip.
Homer, you have a half-brother.
A half-brother?
Uh-huh. It all happened while I was courting your mother. I was checking out the skirts at the local carnival when I first saw her.
Hey, handsome, wanna dunk the clown?
She did things your mother would never do, like have sex for money. A year later, the carnival came back to town and she had a little surprise for me. We left a baby at the Shelbyville orphanage, and I never saw him again. A year later, I married your mother, and we had you.
Abe, I want Homer to grow up respecting his father. He must never know about that carnival incident.
Okay.
Promise you won't tell him.
I promise. Oops! Forget what I just told you. What are you blubbering about?
This makes me feel special, Dad, since I'm the one you kept. That must mean you really love me.
Interesting theory.
And I think it's one of the only times we hear Julie Kavner voice a non-Bouvier.
Yes.
She is the woman who got a clown dunked in her, if you want to call it that.
Oh my. A very sexy voice on her. Yeah, I mean, dunk the clown. What a great euphemism for sex. I really love that. And yes, the have sex for money, an amazing line. Like that's is something your mother would never do. I mean too. It's this is an interesting thing because they have to deal with Homer's mother for the first time, but they don't want to commit to his mother being officially dead or not. One can assume she's dead because she's not in the picture, and they're referring to her as oh, this was before your mother, but nobody says, and your mom died a few years after that, or blah, blah, blah. No, they don't want to commit to that for this episode, which is smart. Why give up a possible story later by committing in this episode to and of course your mother died here or whatever.
Yeah. But I do like as you're saying, this is a classic sitcom setup. I do love the way that it is written, of the story ending on him promising never to tell Homer and then immediately being like, oh, forget I said this.
His flashback reminded him of the promise he forgot. And he's like, crap.
Something that really made me laugh, it always does, is that when this woman is presenting Herb to Abe for the first time at the carnival, the baby has a beard line.
Yes.
And it feels like a mistake. It feels like somebody painting this scene was like, why is Homer so small? Oh, they forgot to to draw the beard on him. Okay, I'll take care of that. It's just very weird to see a baby with a 5 o'clock shadow.
That is a great extra to it. And yeah, this is the second appearance of Shelbyville in the series. They were previously used in Homer at the Bat as the rival team to Springfield, but this will be the first episode they visit Shelbyville. Not that it seems all that special compared to the, bizarro world Shelbyville we'll see in season 6.
Mm-hmm.
Too, with the Mother Simpson, like, this is nothing like the Mona Simpson we will see, but let's just consider this her traditional wife phase before she becomes a wild hippie.
Yes.
Also fitting that, she would later be voiced by frequent Brooks collaborator Glenn Close as well. It also, that flashback sets Abe, like, Homer's birth in the 50s or late 50s, like just how everything looks.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And just thinking about it, like in the season 3 episode where Herb comes back, he never confronts Abe, like, why did you abandon me? There's never a scene like that. He's not interested in Abe at all.
Yeah.
It never comes up.
Wait, just when we're talking about Simpsons chronology, so to situate myself, I also watched the episode before this about Skinner dating Patty, and something I clocked in that I thought was interesting is that when they're on a date, he gets served by, I believe, another like pimply faced teen, and he says whatever the kid's name. Skinner says whatever the kid's name is, class of 71, and the guy says yes. And then later Skinner says, look at that kid, almost 30, and he hasn't made anything of himself. So The Simpsons, at least the second season, can't take place any later than 1983. If that chronology tracks.
Well, yeah, that definitely in the 90, 91, I think up to 93, they just treat it as, well, this is now. And if you count backwards, like, they commit to a 10-year-old Bart being conceived in 1980 when Empire Strikes Back came out. So they even in season 3, they commit to stuff like that. So yeah, also that doesn't, that Skinner timeline does not fit with him being a Vietnam vet, but that would be a season 3 thing. So they haven't committed to that yet either.
I mean, not that I'm a super stickler about this. I just like it seems like from early on they pretty assiduously avoid giving like precise chronologies like that. So I just thought it was funny, especially, again, from the perspective of watching these episodes 30 years later to be like, wait, so when does this take place?
Yeah, I mean, canonically in quotes, it's like Homer and Marge graduated in 74, Bart's born in 80, Lisa's born in 84, Maggie's born in 93. None of these dates made sense like a few years out from the episode's airing.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, and now, like, by now, what they do episodes where like Homer is a teen in like 1994 or something.
Yep, yeah,
yes.
And when they flash back to like, oh, remember 5 years ago, and they treat it as 2015 when they talk about 5 years ago. Yeah. So
I mean, I guess you got to do it, but it is. I don't know. It's funny.
Well, Chris, you are on the right podcast to talk about Simpsons chronology and how it breaks apart over time.
Homer Simpson is a proud member of the class of 2000.
Yes, yeah, and one, Then another moment that feels like filler, which is Homer saying, I'm going to find my brother or die trying, and leaves. That should then follow to the next scene of him looking, but instead it's them driving in a car back and recapping the thing they just learned with
the time-killing Bastard song, which I like the Bastard song.
I love that Bastard song. I do believe when we interviewed John Vitti, that was the one he brought up as so John Vitti, who was a writer on this season as well, he talked about how they liked writing Bart casually swearing, but they said they toned it down, not because of censor notes, but because friends of theirs would say, hey, thanks for teaching my son the word bastard. Like, that was really great. Thanks a lot. So,
well, I especially like that joke of Bart finding a loophole where he can say the word legitimately in its proper context.
It's kind of a sequel to the hell thing they did before, where Bart's like, I sure as hell can't talk about hell without saying hell, can I? So, and now they get away with bastard, which also is just the writers going like, we snuck this one by you censors by saying like, well, this is the real term. He is a bastard. He was born out of wedlock. Also, I think when Lisa says like how Dickensian, like that's them copping to, boy, this is a real like old corny plot of a lost half brother. Wow. It's also,
I mean, that's what makes the show great, even when it's doing stuff that is kind of lazy, that it will write jokes about how lazy its own plot was, which, is now, again, 30 years into the era of the self-reflexive sitcom, feels more de rigueur. But, at the time, it's like, wow, this show knows. Can you believe it? This show knows it's a show.
Yeah.
Lisa has a similar comment when Homer's mom shows up. She said, this is something out of Dickens or Melrose Place.
Yes.
So.
Wow. Yeah, it really is like kind of a sequel line. Apparently, also, if you listen really hard in the background of that scene, you can hear a jingle for Bancroft's English Muffins, which Jeff Martin wrote that jingle as well, but it's almost inaudible.
And that does not come back for another 10 years, that product name.
That's right. That's the one of the This Year Giver English Muffins. Is that the...
No, that's not even on that billboard.
Right, okay.
There's I believe it like in season 11, because we just covered it not too long ago, there is an ad that Marge is clipping a coupon out of. It's a bikini lady holding muffins.
That's right.
And that was the return of Bancroft English Muffins. It's one of these brands from these early years that didn't stick around, like Shakespeare's Fried Chicken.
Right.
I would go to a place called Shakespeare's Fried Chicken.
Mm-hmm. And he's a public domain figure. Anybody could get him. Man. But yes, then we cut to Homer arriving in Shelbyville. He can't find where it was. He asks a Bronson-voiced man, though it's not the mustachioed and bald one. It's just a random guy. I think Silverman at that point, he was the only director who was like, oh no, the Bronson voice guy looks like this. Wes Archer, the director of this, his team didn't know yet. Bronson voice guy is that specific character model.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is just when they started learning that like Dan Castellaneta screaming as Homer is funny and he just needs to do it all of the time.
He should scream every episode title in every episode.
And so Homer thinks he can't find him and is then sent across the street and resets. This is when he runs into Dr. Hibbert's twin brother, which is so great that Homer has no realization of this. He's like, yeah, we're talking about my brother. Like, just shuts it down. And seemingly both of these guys are the brother of Bleeding Gums Murphy, who is the older brother of Hibbert, as we learn in Bleeding Gums Murphy's death episode. But yes, this exchange with Harry Shearer and Dan is just so funny. Like, God, his anger at the Detroit bit is so good.
I myself have spent years searching for my long-lost twin brother.
Yeah. Well, I wish I could help you, but we're looking for my brother today. Can you tell me his name?
According to our records, Mr. and Mrs. Powell adopted your brother and named him Herbert.
Herbert Powell! Great! Where can I find him?
I'm sorry, I'm not allowed to release that information.
Oh, please! This is my life we're talking about here.
Well, I do sympathize with your situation, Mr. Simpson. After all, your brother could be anywhere. Even Detroit.
I know he could be anywhere! That's why I want you to narrow it down, please!
You know, Mr. Simpson, if you ask me, the city of brotherly love isn't Philadelphia, it's Detroit.
Well, if you ask me, changing the subject makes you the most worthless, heartless excuse for a human being I ever...
Read between the lines, you fool!
No! Oh, I get it! Okay. Here's $20. Now will you tell me where my brother lives?
Mr. Simpson, I don't want...
Just take it and tell me!
Detroit. He lives in Detroit.
Fine. Thank you.
I love Homer's like sarcastic, thank you.
It's a great premise where one guy thinks the other guy's playing hardball, but he's doing the opposite of that. He's just, I want to tell you.
And if you ask me, I think changing the subject, God, it's just so good. Like Homer and Dan and Harry are just so big in that. It's a really funny exchange. And it's the kind of energy, they mention it a ton on the commentary of like, the actors are all acting together. Like there is this extra energy to everybody talking and talking over each other at the same time.
Yeah, when Castellaneta fits in that like extra plaintive please under Shearer's line, I think that it gives it that real sense that they're actually interacting.
Which they just by even the classic seasons they weren't always recording together. Like by even season like 7, everybody's busy. Everybody has other jobs. Like they're
filming Godzilla.
Yes, they're all filming Godzilla.
Some people have have other jobs.
Some do, yes, yeah. Hey, Nancy Cartwright has a very busy job at the Scientology Center, like that takes up a lot of time.
And boy, there's only 2 acts worth of Unky Herb material, so we get a minute of Homer dialing the phone.
Okay, I love this.
The phone montage?
Yeah.
I love this phone montage. I think it is it's Jeff Martin writing smarter than it reads at first, which I really like. Like, Jeff Martin is one of the best writers. I think he's underrated as a Simpsons classic writer. But so Homer gets the phone book. We get a montage of seeing him hang up the phone 3 times. And in your brain, you think, a montage means he's called many people,
right,
and we're just seeing 3 of them. Then it cuts to him crossing through the 3rd Herb Powell in there, and he says, I've called them all. So in this montage that is supposed to look like he called a ton of people, you actually just watched it almost in real time of him calling 3 people and giving up.
It's so subtle that even on the commentary, I don't think they understand the montage.
Yes, yeah.
Where it's a fake out. And this makes me think of a better version of this where we called Aronson and Zakowski the biggest gossips in town.
Yes,
where the fake out is they call only 2 numbers. But this is like so low key that you forget that this is they're going for something with this montage. They're not playing it straight.
You're right. They could have maybe arched it just a little bit more to make it clear. But once you get it, I'm like, oh fuck, that's funny. That's so funny. Like they will also talk about time killing. Like Homer just reads names. He literally reads names from a phone book to fill like 30 seconds of the episode.
I really enjoyed that montage joke. I mean, any like joke about the secondhand language of filmmaking is always going to kill for me.
And also as a great bit about trying to turn something into an interesting like plot development, Marge saying like, well, that H. Powell could be it. It's a long shot, but I'll give it a try. Like, it's so good.
Boy, Powell is looking for trouble putting his office number in the phone book.
Yeah, a guy this rich should be unlisted, really. There's, we were going to have a lot of notes with how Herb Powell runs his business, but this is the first one. Like, you should be unlisted, but then again, we have found out that a lot of people, like a lot of very rich people's emails are just their name plus Gmail. Or
usually if they're old, it's at AOL.com.
Yes, yeah. So, maybe it's realer than we think.
I think it's very funny they go to such great lengths to disguise his face, and then every commercial for this was the window rolling down and you see Herb Powell's face.
Yes,
so it was spoiled by every
such a
commercial.
Great shot. I love, again, for how like simple the animation is here. I love the car window rolling down and revealing the Homer's exact profile in the car.
Yeah, I just feel so bad for Archer and his team that they, were instructed hide his face for like 2 different long scenes, and then after they go to all that work, then the Fox ad department just says, well, no, we need to show the shot of his face in the first commercial. Like, we just got to do it right there and spoil the whole thing. But yes, the H does stand for Herbert, we learn in this next clip.
It would just be great if I could get a Silicon Valley area phone book and look up E. Musk and do crank calls.
Hello. Is this H. Powell of Detroit, Michigan?
Yeah.
By any chance, does the H stand for Herbert?
Yeah.
Woohoo! Woo! The H stands for Herbert! Herb, were you adopted?
Yeah.
From the Shelbyville orphanage?
How did you know that?
Because I'm your baby brother, Homer! Hello? 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 Stupid phone!
Hey, knock it off! I'm here! We're just silent because of the emotion involved.
Oh, sorry.
Homer, I think we need to get together.
Okay, brother. Grab the next plane to Springfield. We got a couch that folds out.
I'll tell you what. Why don't you come here?
Dun, dun, dun. And rich guys like Powell as well, who they make clear that he is a self-made man, that he wasn't adopted by a rich family and all that. You would think those guys would never want to hear from a relative they've never met before who just showed up to probably ask for money. But he seems so desperate for any connection to somebody. He's like, please come into the house. Like, even Homer, who would never, seemingly this whole episode never wants to take advantage of having a rich brother. He gives him the job. Powell. I think Powell's company would have folded no matter what. Honestly, that's what I feel overall. But Yeah, the DeVito on the other end of the line is just so funny. Like, is the silent because the emotion involved is so funny. I think too, it's probably lucky he didn't run into Abe, because Homer is blameless in this. He was born after Herb was given up for adoption, but I would think he would hate Abe with all of his being for abandoning him as a child.
Yes,
and never looking for him.
And by the way, all of the buildings we see in Detroit are Frank Lloyd Wright buildings. This was Wes Archer's idea. I'm not going to name all of them because it's not that important, but just in case you're wondering,
yes,
they're going for something here.
That's a very funny detail. I did not notice that. Yeah, I mean, you kind of Herb's idea that like Homer should design the car, that maybe this was like one rewrite away from giving Herb the motivation of being like, hey, an everyman, I could use this in my business. But yeah, it is very funny to be like, no, I think you should come here, and the pull out that he's like in a gigantic mansion.
But he won't buy plane tickets for Homer. Homer's got to drive because we need a minute of scenes in the car. There's not enough story to go around here.
You're right. Pay for it. Like, honestly, he looks like a private jet kind of guy, but even if he isn't in 91, it's like, just get your brother first class. Like, if you're going to put him in a mansion and spend all this other money when he's there. But I guess Homer's enough of a dim bulb, maybe he just insisted like, okay, we're gonna drive, and he hangs up before Herb can say, wait, I can fly you, or whatever. This is a far cry from a decade later Mel Gibson flying directly to their house in a plane and picking up Homer in an airplane to fly to Hollywood
to work on the movie together.
Yes. Yeah. So yes, we come in with an "Are we there yet?" which again on the commentary they're like, "Boy, that fills up script pages, don't it?" But I love Marge doing the classic mom thing of, "We'll turn this car right around," and Homer believing it more than the kids. That's such a great joke. Like, God, Homer, it was an idle threat.
Yeah.
Come on, she's just sick of it.
Even when they're talking about from the writer's perspective, just filling up screenplay pages with gags like this. I mean, it goes a long way to what I was talking about at the very beginning of like the kids just being very sweet and kid-like. And again, when you're looking at like cartoons these days, and especially The Simpsons, where like everything is ratcheted tight for efficiency, mostly just having shows that can feel like a vibe, even if not every line is a funny joke. I mean, I appreciated it a little bit.
Yeah, there's just a really simple joke in here about Homer going over a pothole and spilling his drink over himself, and the kids laughing. It's
exactly, exactly.
It's not like an inspired joke that's super clever, just like a man fall down kind of joke, but it's a nice little moment.
Yeah, I think it feels pointless. I almost thought that they did it, but they don't do any other bit like this. But later in the episode, when Homer is listing all the things he wants in a car, he does mention like there's not a cup holder big enough for my type of drink. And so him spilling it in this act would set that up, but there's no other moment of him experiencing a thing he'd want to improve in a car.
I guess the annoying kids in the back seats would be one of them.
Yeah, but then there should be a scene where he's like, "Where's a horn to honk? I'm always looking for one." Like he's in this section. Also, all these guys mistaking him for Herb. He doesn't. I mean, okay. Everything in his face, from his eyebrows to his chin, looks like Herb. In every other way, he does not look like him. I don't think it fully works as a joke of like, wow, everybody thinks he's Herb.
People should be saying Herb Powell has fallen apart. Something is wrong.
Oh, God.
I do love the Herb's subtly skinnier character design.
Yeah, it's that they are still able to evoke Homer while flattening the gut on him.
Yeah.
Though as a kid, I did learn the important lesson that a cop will treat a rich guy differently. Like I did need to learn that as a kid when Homer gets pulled over. I love Homer's like, see how well I handled that? Like
where he's just cowering in the seat. And I also love the framing of that shot where you're like looking at the cop's giant gun in the foreground and like Homer shrinking in the background.
The exact type of scary like other state officer you don't want to run into on a long car ride. Yes. Yeah. And yes, then we cut to the boardroom with Herb. This is a very late 80s, early 90s automotive industry thing, which means you're scared of the Japanese and American auto is dying and all those fears of that era, which all come through in his speech of like, this is why our company's losing. It does sound like his company's on the bubble as it is right here.
But all the egghead executives saying that they need to chase the Japanese car trends. And isn't there a joke in there about all of them going to Ivy League schools?
Yes, yeah. They well, first off, they blame mushy-headed one-worlders in Washington and some kind of gypsy curse. But yes, knowing the show Writer's Room, especially then being full of Harvard guys who all knew each other, it's very funny to hear them all go like him say, all you Harvard deadheads. And they're like, well, weren't you in Harvard too? Yeah, but I was mopping the floors and cleaning your toilets. Like, oh yeah, that's where I remember you. Like,
just they're overeducated but have no practical advice for this sort of thing.
I love, which, in the Writer's Room, I think there was a disparity between you're the Harvard guys and we're some of the guys who aren't Harvard guys. Though Jeff Martin was one of those Harvard guys, as were Gene and Reese. And I think too of like this talk about this feels like a very Ivy League joke, of course, but it's a joke about within Harvard alums there are disparities in class. Like they probably went to Harvard with a ton of people who were just like, oh yeah, your family got you in, you're rich people. Even in the 80s, that was their experience. But then, Al Jean, like his dad owned a hardware store in Detroit, but he was not like from the Boston genes or whatever, like Al Jean. And he was like a 16-year-old or no, even younger than that, going to Harvard. And
really? I did not know that about Al Jean.
Yes, Al Jean. I don't want to compare him to Ben Shapiro in many ways, but in that way, as
he was like a kid genius.
He was.
I'm sure he carried a briefcase at 15.
And Jeff Martin too comes from like more like not a fancy pants background as a Harvard alum, and I think it's same with Reese too.
Reese's dad was a doctor, so it's up in the air.
All right, you know what? I'll take that one away from him. He's got some class signifiers more on his side.
Have you had Reese on the show?
We have.
Yeah. Yep. You were party to an interview with him, weren't you?
Yeah. I mean, he was very kind. I really liked talking to him, and his perspective on these early seasons was funny. But the thing that he said, where he lives in New York and flies out to LA one day a week, like flies out on Tuesday night, works in the Writer's Room Wednesday, and flies back Wednesday night for like 20 weeks a year is, I mean, all respect to Mike Reese for living the lifestyle he wants, but that is like genuinely one of the more insane lifestyle things that I've heard.
I think unfortunately Mike Reese's grift is over now because of COVID.
Yeah, now he can.
Oh yes,
now he can zoom in, but hey, if I figured Fox is paying for those flights every time, he's just getting the miles. But no, it is pretty insane to be like, well, if you want me one day a week for a rewrite room, you got to fly me 2 overnights, and I would be sure it's business class at least, if not better, on those flights.
I'm sure. I just like hate being on planes so much that like that feels like torture to me.
Yeah, 2 6-hour flights in 36 hours.
Yeah, exactly.
Sounds awful.
And then you have to be funny in a rewrite room of like, well, hey, let's have some fun. What's a funny joke for Homer to say? Like, I would just be like, I am dead in my brain, or I'm just already experiencing pre-flight stress for my flight back.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if I fly out to LA, I'm like, yeah, I can do some work in like, I don't know, 3 days.
No, we need 5 jokes about TikTok.
Yeah, right now. Where is it? Yeah. Hey, I mean, maybe that's why they're paying Reese the big bucks for that stuff, that he can jam it out. But we've thought about that many times, of that crazy travel life he was living in the before times. And yeah, this is also where I've been playing a lot of the video game Hades in that, which is a really fun video game. And the name Persephone comes up a lot, and every time it's said, I just think of DeVito's like, Persephone.
Nobody wants to drive around in some hungry Greek broad.
Yeah, I love that. And also it's funny because then like 6 years later, he'd be in the Greek Disney comedy Hercules, talking about all this Greek stuff as Phil, the trainer who looks exactly like Danny DeVito. It's also very funny, but set in a dark way, of how the scene just like peters out, and he's just like, I'm just a lonely guy, and just walks away, and everybody's like, good Lord. Like, That's how uncomfortable it would be in a meeting room if your boss just like walked away just like sobbing and left a meeting. You're like, oh man, this guy's messed up.
Yeah, it seems like a good way to get a vote of no confidence from your board.
You know, that's the secret behind. You're right. The board is conspiring against him. They're like, well, clearly he left the room crying, and now once his brother shows up, he just checks out completely. Like, that's really why he ends up destitute, that they outmaneuver him in those meetings.
There's an interesting relationship with this board, though, because they don't like him. They're like put off by him, but some still want to kiss his ass. That one guy's like, I want to hear more about your roots and what they can teach me.
Yes. Yeah.
It is in that little scene a pretty good send up of like Ivy League obsequious snobs.
Yeah, they also want to show off that they know the story of Hades and Persephone and pitch a thing that no one would buy a car. He's right. No average man would want to buy a car called Persephone. Like it's a silly thing. Yeah. And also, I guess actually speaking of Mike Reese, the guy who says like, we'd love to hear from you, and all that, the way he's designed looks like Mike Reese. Like they say he's supposed to look like Reese.
Nice.
But yes, then head to his home. We see Homer on the outside. Like, he doesn't believe it. He still doesn't know he's rich, which I guess that too shows maybe that was a test from Herb. He's like, I'll just let him discover I'm rich, but see how he treats me like on the phone when he doesn't know I'm rich, just so I know that he's not just using me, or that he's not even really my brother. He's just pretending he is to like scam me. But this is when the brothers meet up, and it's a really sweet little moment. I like this.
You look just like, except you got a little more and a little less. God, I feel so
Welcome to my home, brother.
Holy moly, the bastard's rich. Herb, allow me to introduce my family. This is my wife, Marge.
Hello. Hello. You old dog, she's gorgeous.
Thank you.
And our 3 children, Bart, Lisa, and Maggie.
Hello, sir. Hello, Mr. Powell.
All born in wedlock?
Yeah, though the boy was a close call.
So, Lisa, are you the little hellraiser your father told me about?
No, sir, I can assure you I'm not. I'm the little hellraiser, sir.
Would you like to hold the baby, Herb?
Oh, I'm afraid I wouldn't know how.
No, what's to know? Just dive in. Catch.
God, that new baby smell. Homer, you're the richest man I know.
I feel the same about you.
What?
If you look at it from a time filler perspective, having a scene where the main characters of the show are reintroduced to another character, that also is filling time. But it's all very cute and funny. Like I think that Herb is very interested in the out of wedlock status of the kids or not, because he feels a lot of internal shame about being born out of wedlock. So he's worried that would be, he asks anybody. I would think he probably asks a lot of people, like, was your child born in wedlock? Good. Then they are a worthy child, not like me, a lesser being.
I think this caused me to ask my mom what wedlock meant, and I got a straight answer from her.
I do think this episode probably taught 9-year-old me the term bastard and what it meant in, like, in a textbook definition term.
It is funny after they had a whole scene establishing that Herb is literally a bastard, that Homer then under his breath refers to him as a bastard offhandedly.
That's really, it's really getting off on the wrong foot with your brother to call him a bastard, like even under your breath next to him.
Yeah.
So this next scene I want to talk about with the pork chop back and forth. Now, pork chops were a consistent thing in Homer's life up till this point because it was his favorite food. There were several references to it, Marge making pork chops. But this is really the last pork chop joke. There is one more in Dog of Death when they have to save money to get the operation for Santa's Little Helper, and Marge is going over all the changes the family will have to make. The one is pork chop night will now be chub night. Yes. And Homer goes, I don't even know what that is. And that's really the last pork chop joke until we get to season 11, when we get the episode where Homer becomes a food critic and Marge gives him pork chops and he hates them. And she goes, you always like my pork chops. So I think pork chops were not a funny enough food for Homer to enjoy as he got more disgusting. Like in this episode, we're seeing the first joke about him being stinky. The Homer is gross jokes are escalating. So he needs to start drinking Skittlebrow and eating disgusting sandwiches, things like that. Like pork chops are not a comedy food anymore.
Do you think there is something funny about pork chops? And I'm wondering also if there's like some kind of cultural connotation of pork chops that of the like early 90s that we're missing or something. Because in the episode I watched before this, the Skinner one, there's also a joke that Homer promised to limit his pork intake to 6 nights a week.
I mean, I do think even back then, as far as like a family of 5 and what they would have, like pork chop seems to be a cheaper meat you would get. You wouldn't get beef, or you wouldn't get like a full chicken or whatever. You'd get pork and a pork chop, especially, which are known as, if you cook it the wrong way, it's just a real chewy, rough piece of meat. And especially if you're like frying up pork chops as Homer wants them done, like that can be tough, especially like in an unseasoned kitchen that many people had back then. I definitely think it's a statement of Homer's low class taste, especially that here he's meeting a brother who's telling him like, cook will make you anything. And Homer's idea of like, well, by anything you mean a pork chop whenever I want it. Herb could even say like, you can eat other foods too. I mean, don't you like steak, Homer? But he's just like, no, pork chops. Lots of pork chops. Great.
4 a.m. Christmas morning.
Yeah. My tummy.
I was looking it up, and 87 is when the pork, the other white meat slogan was invented to redefine pork as a classier kind of meat. But these jokes are making fun of the low classness of pork. And also, he might even be doing this episode, but like an early background joke for Homer is he's eating a bag of pork rinds light.
Yes.
And I think he's got a bag of chips in this episode. When he meets Herb, he throws them down when the limo pulls up, and it might be a bag of pork rinds.
Yeah. Homer, I guess pork in general, but yeah, you're right. Homer by season 3, he's just the food monster. He's just, I eat lots of food. That's the Homer we know, not one who's like in Brush with Greatness even, which is late season 2, when Homer is, breaking his diet just to eat something. He doesn't like start chewing on pork chops or whatever. He fills his mouth with, frosting with whipped cream. But I just had one other thought about the wedlock thing on Bart question. Knowing now that they say that this episode was written before Way We Was, because this was the first McBain they wrote, then that also means that they did this joke, and then when they did The Way We Was, which has the answer that Marge was got pregnant with Bart before they were married, and that's why Homer proposed to her. This was the answer of like, oh, because they had this joke of Homer identifying that it was a close call that Bart was born in wedlock. That's why then in The Way We Was, they can do the flashback to show that Marge got pregnant with Bart, and that's why Homer proposed to her. So, but yes, this run of pork chop jokes, it really is a time killer. And same with, I also do like Bart is instantly complimentary to Uncle Herb. Like he calls him Uncle Herb. He calls him Sir. Like
I really like the line, "I'm the Hellraiser, sir."
Yeah, he knows. Unlike Homer, who doesn't realize like the benefits of being nice to a rich relative, Bart instantly is like, I'm very respectful. Yes, sir, Unky Herb. Yeah, you're great. Oh, he sure is, Uncle Herb. Like, yeah, I love that with Bart. And then him telling like, do you think you could call me Unky Herb? Sure thing. Like, yeah. And just like that, he's crying at just the idea of like, oh, I have a nephew. My nephew's adorable. Like he's just so happy.
He's feeling the emotional power of being an uncle.
Which Uncle Magic. He's feeling that classic Uncle Magic. I have a very brief clip here, but this joke of Marge is also very dark, which I really like.
Marco! Hello.
Will you kids shut up?
So, Marge, a little about yourself.
Oh, well, I met Homer in high school. We got married and had 3 beautiful children.
Wow. We have so much catching up to do.
Actually, I just told you pretty much everything.
That's it. Marge has no other interior life. She can't say like, oh, and I have this bridge club, or I do this, or I do nothing. She's like, well, I met Homer and we had children, and that's it. There's nothing else to me. I feel like that's how they felt about writing Marge. Like, well, there's nothing else interesting about Marge. She just is like, she's the mom.
I guess it's hard to tell like how much self Obviously, that by virtue of being a joke, they're making fun of that about Marge, but it's hard to tell how much the writers feel in on that joke or if it's at the expense of Marge's character.
Mm-hmm.
They're saying like Marge actually is boring or being like, oh, we should probably fill this out a little bit at some point.
And then we get a montage of just the family having fun together and just all these new rich people fun they can have of, going boating or going to the boating
a
comes
pony on a boat.
A pony on a boat, yeah.
I love this shot of Homer calling Abe. He's gone Hollywood. He's got a cordless phone, sunglasses, and he is drinking the Quickie Mart Super Slaker. That is the drink he spilled on himself earlier. There is no mention of this style of drink ever after this episode, but it's obviously a big gulp, right?
Yes, it's clearly a big gulp. Yeah, and it's the one he'll mention later when he's talking about how big cups can be. But yeah, at Quickie Mart, like in season 1, Bart asked for like a jumbo super squishy or whatever. He's not using that Super Slaker name for it. Also, just Abe's reflection of like, I kept the wrong one. I feel like in season 3, Abe would have just said that to Homer instead of pulling the phone away to save his feelings. He would have just said, I kept the wrong one. But it's fun to see the shots of like them throwing the coins too, and you just see Homer's unlucky in every way that Herb is lucky, and Homer's just like, he's a loser. Homer's a loser, Herb is a winner, and he's the successful big brother. And also, there's a spitting over the side thing, which Bart learned about that from his near-death experience, about the joys of spitting over things and having it land on people
on the way to heaven.
And we get one little joke of Homer calling up Cook in the middle of the night. I would think by this point Cook would already have it like pre-seasoned and ready to go. They're like, all right, Homer's got another. Let's just have a pork chop ready for this idiot.
Yeah, look, we know at some point he's going to test this midnight pork chops availability.
Also, that feels like a very specifically observed rich guy thing of like, oh yeah, like the Harvard writers know their rich friends just call the guy Cook. It's like, oh yeah, Cook. Doesn't have a name. It's just like, Cook will do that for you. Okay. But yes, Homer is about to get the benefits of having a rich brother as well, of getting a free car, which they mention on the commentary, complete fabrication that there's only $40 of steel in a car. That is not true. I don't know too many car facts, but I'm sure that is not true. But this is when Homer impresses Herb to such a degree. I feel like Herb has a death wish of his company, honestly. Like it's an internal death wish at this point.
Yeah, he's become as successful as he can, and now the only like possible joy is in risk.
Yeah,
and so he knows that he has to throw it all away.
And then so he hires Homer in this next scene.
Are you sure you want to give me a car?
Hey, you know what these things cost me? There's maybe $40 worth of steel in them.
Oh, okay. I'd like a big one then.
We don't have a big one.
Why not?
Because Americans don't want big cars.
Well, then give me one with lots of pep.
Sorry, our cars don't have pep.
Why not?
Because Americans want good mileage, not pep.
Homer, tell the nice man what country you come from.
America.
Do you hear that, you morons? This is why we're getting killed in the marketplace. Instead of listening to what people want, you're telling them what they want. Homer, I need your help.
You do?
Yeah. I want you to help me design a car. A car for all the Homer Simpsons out there. And I want to pay you $200,000 a year.
And I want to let you.
I think this is a time, maybe you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, when cars were still being designed based on the fears of the gas crisis of the 70s. So they were smaller, they were more economical. It wouldn't be until like the late 90s where we would get like the SUV craze, every suburban owning a gigantic pickup truck.
Totally.
Things like that. But yeah, this was very much of the time.
Yeah, I mean, there's a decent sociological commentary in there of it's not that Americans didn't want big cars with lots of pep. It's that they couldn't afford big cars with lots of pep. And so the cars had to get, smaller and more fuel efficient during the time. But, we're fucking Americans. Of course we want a gigantic car that gets 3 miles to the gallon, but, goes 0 to 90 in 2 seconds.
And be a garish monstrosity. Like,
yes, exactly.
Well, this is very much about the car market at the time, which was like you'd have traditional nationalist guys like Homer who would complain that like all these tiny Japanese cars, they can't do X, Y, or Z, or they're but then they would see the American companies trying to catch up with the fuel efficiency and price of a Honda or a Toyota. And so this was it's a clever idea of just a scene for friction of the executive saying our market research says that this is what people want, and then the most average of men, Homer, saying but this is what I want. Like and also I think this has a statement about art and making art, that you can creating something by committee of people out of touch that will leave you on one end of the spectrum, but if you give complete power to a dumb idiot who thinks he knows how to do something, it also will lead to a very giant mistake. But yeah, Homer, I would like to think that Homer at least got a few months pay at that $200K a year, so he got some pretty good paychecks out of this.
And the free car. I mean, come on. He's making away like a bandit here.
You know, I don't think they drive home in the same car. I don't think Homer got that free car. He should at least, not to get too far ahead, but he should at least get to keep the one Homer they made, you know? I guess
that's true.
Yeah. But unfortunately, not the case. But yeah, he gets $200K a year. They seem to at least work on that car for a month. I think Homer got one of those paychecks.
I mean, from conception to production, you got to assume it's at least, 60 days to a prototype.
For sure.
Question for the experts. Do we see the Homer any other time in the series?
Oh boy.
Like even as like a background, or in like a auto yard or at an auction or something, a classic Simpsons background joke.
In the series, I think Bob is going to look.
I'm looking it up now.
But I my belief is in the series proper, I don't think it ever appears like in animation, but in side content like the Simpsons hit and run game, for example.
Yeah, I mean, obviously.
Yeah,
yes.
it's a drivable thing. And the Homer also is made into like multiple toys. Most famously, there's a 2013 Hot Wheels toy of the Homer, which you can get for very reasonable prices on eBay if you want.
So I have shocking news for both of you. The Homer appears again in the opening gag of How Lisa Got Her Marge Back. Episode number 592 aired in April of 2016. So one other appearance.
There we go. Okay.
And
I always love, that's such a classic Simpsons thing. Like, I always love when you see the Olmec head in their basement.
Yes, yeah.
But in this case, so with the HD opening, when you see the Simpsons logo, there's always something that flies by the screen, like Frink or whatever. In this case, it was Homer soaring by in the Homer.
Oh,
so
that's nice.
Non-canonical, I guess. It was not in the story or anything, but they just remembered that reference. But only one other time.
Yeah, I was also thinking of the logistics of Homer getting this $200,000 a year salary position, that when the mass layoffs happen later in the episode, shouldn't Homer have at least gotten some level of severance? Like, I think he should have got like at least $100K severance, like 6 months pay.
Yeah. What was his benefits package like in Powell Motors?
Well, Herb Powell is homeless after this, so this business, there's something going on with it.
It's all a paper tiger, really. That's the. It's almost like some would like the Elon Musk business of like, oh, it's all just a scam. Like this Homer, the Homer was just his next fake thing to present like a robot that's not really a robot.
I do want to talk about Elon Musk more when we get to the unveiling of the Homer.
Okay,
great.
We then cut to Homer getting his new job. They, on the commentary, completely own up to this. Herb has to make many decisions that are incredibly stupid to set up the end of this episode. And that begins with this act starting with him saying, I don't want to see anything until it's finished. Why? Why? Other than to set yourself up for incredible failure, why would you make that rule of I don't want to see anything until it's finished?
This time I think
it kind of tracks, because he does say that you got his advice, like it fits together, because his advice to Homer is like, you have to have perfect confidence in whatever you say, and that's how I run my business. So,
okay.
I do think that it is characterally consistent in that he's like, I shoot from the hip and just say whatever I want with like perfect belief in my own truth and accuracy. So, it flows, even if it is stupid.
And this is when Herb really shows what he wanted to do. The real reason he gave this all to Homer, I think, is so he can take a month off and just like goof off with the kids. Taking the kids, like I love Marge saying, I hope this doesn't spoil them, as Bart is driving a yacht and Lisa is riding a pony on a yacht. Like, That's amazing. Now everybody's a freaking boater with all their boats, but that seemed like wild opulence at the time of a pony on a boat.
Also very dangerous.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You're gonna hurt that pony was put down, like it broke its legs at one point on that.
I've seen The Ring. I know what happens when you put a horse on a boat.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
Nice pull. That is a very intense scene on The Ring. God, The Ring's such a good movie.
It's great.
Then we get to see the designers working with Homer, and the designers are smartly keeping his Homer as far away from actually being able to do anything as possible.
And they are right.
Yeah.
Even though they're very patronizing and saying, your brother said to help us, and you can help us by getting us coffee.
Yeah, exactly. Because for their own jobs, they know this idiot who's never designed a car before probably shouldn't actually be doing this. So we've working in the corporate world, I've definitely had experiences of being assigned to somebody and having to work around them as carefully as possible while not upsetting like their higher up person in the company. Like that's. Yeah. But yeah, Homer is just marginalized in the office. They then cut to Homer at Herb's home, where they are playing baseball indoors because he has a meeting room that is that big. Like that's amazing. Like
I think this is a nice little early. It feels very early in the run Homer moment where he comes home and he's like dejected and sad because he like has a concept of his own inferiority and is a little ashamed about it, which feels like something that gets ironed out of Homer's character pretty quickly, like even in another few seasons that he would just be like mad or blithely unaware of being marginalized in the office,
Homer gets unearned confidence at the end of this scene, but I think he just always has it in general either, or he's just too stupid to know that people hate him like that. That's that great joke later in season 4 where Homer realizes that everybody at work is picking on him. He's like, I'm gonna punch Lenny tomorrow. He does it. But yes, this next clip is when Herb gives Homer a pep talk that again will lead to the destruction of his company. And when Herb even lists all the reasons he hired Homer, it's like, well, then you're an idiot. But yes, here's the clip.
Homer, I gave you this job because you're an average schmo.
Oh, great.
All you need is a little self-confidence.
Oh, Unky Herb, I don't know anything about cars.
Listen to me. Here's what you do. From now on, before you say anything, say to yourself, if I was ever sure of anything, I'm sure of this. Do you understand?
Sort of.
Homer,
What?
Answer me again with self-confidence.
Sort of!
Now go get him!
All right, you egghead. I want a place in this car to put my drink.
Sir, the car has a beverage holder.
Hello, Einstein. I said a place to put my drink. You know those super slakers they sell in the Quickie Mart? The cup is this big.
Extremely large beverage holder.
I'm not done yet. You know that little ball you put on the aerial so you can find your car in the parking lot? That should be on every car.
Little ball.
And some things are so snazzy they never go out of style, like tail fins and bubble domes and shag carpeting.
Oh man, I love that Homer calls him Unky Herb as well, which like it puts him in such a diminutive role to him.
Oh, Unky Herb.
Yeah, and secondly, the great animation and sound editing. Homer runs out screaming and enters the next scene with a continued scream, like he's screamed all the way from Uncle Herb's home to the office again. Like it's just so good.
I'm realizing that he says in that scene that he wants shag carpeting in the car, and I know that it would be very awkward to show the interior of the Homer given the directing of this thing, but I do kind of wish we got to see the exaggerated shag carpeting on the inside of the Homer.
Homer is very much a man of the 60s and 70s in these early years, so all of these ideas like tail fins and bubble domes are directly from that era for sure.
Yeah.
When now listener, if you're going to build your own Homer to try to go viral with like this guy built his own Homer car, you have to get the interior right too. You got to have shag carpeting in it.
Shag carpeting in the oversized cup holder.
You can't just be on the outside looking like the Homer. You also have to be the Homer on the inside too. That's another just like great joke that always just flew by me until now. When Homer says he wants those things on the antenna so you can find your car in a parking lot. Every car should have one of those, thus defeating the purpose of having one of those on your car because everyone would have one. So you couldn't find your car. I like that.
That's a good gag.
And I did look up a little history on the cup holder in cars. I'm not going to go too into it, but I recall growing up seeing the cup holders in my family's car. So we had an Accord, a Honda Accord, and then a Jeep, and then a newer Honda Accord. That was my childhood to adulthood cars my family owned. And in those, I got to see the cup holders grow. Like when we got the Jeep, it was like, oh, this is a bigger cup holder. And apparently it was like in the 80s as it started getting more and more standard in cars because it was seen as like, oh, your drive-throughs are more regular. People are stopping in drive-throughs and they need a place to put their cups when they're driving through drive-throughs. And of course, just a few years after this, there would be cup holders all over the national news, or the lack of them, because the McDonald's hot coffee lawsuit would not have happened if that woman had a cup holder in her car.
Okay.
She was holding it between her thighs in the car because she didn't have a cup holder.
I forget what the thing is, but isn't there like a revisionist history story about the lady with the hot coffee where, she was like a national joke for saying, the coffee's too hot, but actually she was like totally in the right.
Absolutely.
And it was like McDonald's malfeasance.
There's a documentary about it. I think it's called Hot Coffee or something like that.
Yeah.
Where, it was all like pro-corporation propaganda. We were all told, can you believe this dumbass spilled coffee? It's hot coffee. It's supposed to be hot. Yeah, it's...
like, oh, we got to warn people the coffee's too hot, when actually, yes, McDonald's had far too hot of coffee. They were in the wrong, but that's why McDonald's, even when they lose that lawsuit, they pay the big bucks to make it look like a useless lawsuit and a sign of like, oh, the overly litigious America, when it's really about like, for once, a giant corporation was actually found guilty of a bad thing they did.
I have to assume
coffee at like 300 degrees or whatever.
Yeah. I have to assume Dennis Leary wrote at least 20 minutes of material based on that incident.
Oh my God. He was so mad when he heard about that story.
I can see him pacing and smoking and ranting.
I would bet Jay Leno did 70 jokes about it at the very least, just in monologues, not just outside. I'm just saying in monologues, 70 different nights of monologues about it. Homer is asking for all of these insane things. The designers are doing the right call of like, this is terrible. I have to tell the boss right now that this is a giant mistake and has to stop. And Herb's reaction again, this is a self-destructive man. Like everything he's told, anybody who has been successful in the car industry, you think he would listen to, especially this guy who has his home number. He's probably worked with him on cars before. He should know and trust his business, but this guy wants to fail, I think. But this leads to another very funny clip of him telling the guy to say the opposite of all of his problems to impress the kids.
Okay, this is what you're gonna do. You're gonna hang up, call me back, and say the exact opposite of everything you just said. Goodbye. All right, Lisa, come over here.
What is it, Unky Herb?
I want you to hear what the guys down at the plant think of your old man. Yellow.
Homer Simpson is a brilliant man with lots of well-thought-out practical ideas. He is ensuring the financial security of this company for years to come. Oh, yes. And his personal hygiene is above reproach.
Whoa, I just agree. Homer, I'm impressed.
Pretty good, eh?
Yeah, I mean, we're crossing a line here in that Homer is now disgusting.
Yes,
he started the show as a normal, kind of dumb dad, but now he's a stinky man. I think this will escalate to the point where in season 4, people working in a rendering plant can smell Homer nearby.
Yep, yeah.
And then they back off of these jokes a lot after that. I think they were just getting very punchy in season 4 and overworked. So Homer is just a very disgusting man who eats rotten food and smells worse than melted hog fat.
But I also love the drawing of Herb with like the cigar in his mouth, like that's a great drawing. I guess, if you want to view it as anything other than Herb being self-destructive, it's that he wants to impress the kids, that he loves his niece and nephew so much that he just wants them to hear a compliment about their dad so they can all feel good. Maybe that's why he's in such deep denial. But really, I think he's just a self-destructive man. And
that's another moment of the kids, as I was saying earlier, being like sweet in this episode. I enjoy them being like proud and happy for their dad getting compliments, where again, I feel like by another few seasons going on, their reaction would be more like, that doesn't sound like dad.
him. I go, that guy? No way. Yeah.
I mean, this may seem obvious, but comedically, I like how we only hear the other half of the phone call where he says the reverse thing. We don't hear the first part.
Yeah,
it really pays off.
Just as he's saying everything, you think of what the opposite of that is that he said before. It's just, it's a great concept, just as comedy lines, and that's why I think it makes sense that in the next scene, every designer is just egging Homer on because they're like, I tried, so fuck it, yeah, whatever you want, Homer. Like, oh yeah, tail fins, yes sir. Like they're just right. It's a hell of a toboggan ride, as Superintendent Chalmers would say.
I mean, but these things they're pitching, like if you have a Tesla, and again we'll talk about Elon Musk soon, you can play like Stardew Valley with your steering wheel while you're in park.
Yes, yeah, it's very true.
So these aren't so crazy, these ideas.
No. So I love that Homer is mad at that guy. He wants to fire him because Homer's complaining that the kids are annoying. The guy presents a practical and maybe good idea, and Homer's like, who's giving it? Like, what's he paying you for? Because he does not want his kids to be happy. He wants a thing that punishes his children. So that's
that is a very funny joke of him being like, what about the wildly at the time outlandish idea of what about video screens in the back of the car, which would become, of course, reality in like 15 years.
Then meanwhile, we cut to one more Unky Herb having fun, or another Unky Herb having fun moment, which, as far as lines go, are good ones for me and Bob's careers. But they watch an Itchy and Scratchy. It's a fun. It's not the funniest Itchy and Scratchy, but it's very bloody. I do like that.
It's the one I can think of where Scratchy, he can actually reconstitute his body, because if you look at the TV screen while they're rolling around on the ground, Scratchy in the milkshake glass sucks himself up and reconstitutes his body back into normal. So usually a cartoon will end with Scratchy in a bloody heap, but in this one he recovers like in a Tom and Jerry cartoon.
You're right. It's a self-suck.
Jesus.
Foaminess of the Scratchy milkshake is particularly gross in the animation there.
And as they all, and this is also the first of many times where like this happens in Burns' Air. Bart shows Burns Itchy and Scratchy, and every adult, once they see Itchy and Scratchy, are hysterical with laughter. Like they lose it. Like it's the funniest thing they have ever seen. But this reaction from Uncle Herb is great. I love how DeVito delivers this brief line here.
To think I wasted my life in boardrooms and stockholders meetings when I could have been watching cartoons.
This old fool has wasted his life.
Wow, nice. How fun. I love that. That's one of the last bits of joy he will ever have. Herb. And then we get some clips of like Homer being tested for it's a luxury car commercial, like testing his aerodynamics too.
He's in a wind tunnel for some reason.
I like that there's in that scene there's a nice little touch of the aerodynamic diagram of Homer's body in the control room.
And then we cut to Bart and Lisa getting to play with penguins. I would think Bart killed at least one penguin that day. I would think not intentionally, just accidentally. And then another of my favorite drawings of this whole episode, Homer tearing down their things, and then when he crudely draws his Homer, the look on his face as he points at it, just
stupid yet determined.
Yes, yeah. The stupid self-confidence is in his face as he points at it. I love that drawing so much. And so it's the big unveiling. Here we are at the very fancy at Herb's company office. Again, another thing to place it in time. I love that the sign says the car of the 90s.
Yes.
To really let you know this is 1991, and to hurt it in any kind of rerunning of it, to watch it in the year 2004 and see that it says the car of the 90s. Herb has invited everybody. This also reminds me of the premiere of Poochie, with how the very fancy presentation of it, that even the Pope's there for it. Yes. But yes, this has more. There were opulent presentations of cars back in 1991 as well. But yes, now that we've seen so many clips of ridiculous Tesla press conferences.
Yeah.
It's hard not to be reminded of it when watching this.
And that's what ruins the ending for me, is that it happens a lot, but satire is now fallen behind in the face of reality. We have outpaced this satire where if you look at the things that Elon Musk does, we are maybe a week after his press conference where he says, I want to make a robot. And to demonstrate, here's a person dressed as a robot.
Yep.
And he is not ruined. He is not brought down by this. In fact, it makes him more popular and gets him more attention. So I feel that if this happened today, there would be Powell stands online fighting for his behalf.
Absolutely.
That's a great point, that the Elon Musk guy in a suit dancing like a robot is absolutely a Simpsons gag. That is something out of classic Simpsons, and it goes by. And like, obviously there are people like us who are like, this is stupid. But, it just goes by and it's like, oh, that Elon at it again.
Like, how is this dumber than Cybertruck?
Absolutely. No, this is cooler than Cybertruck, really.
With Cybertruck, was that the press conference in which he said, this is unbreakable, and then the window breaks immediately? And
yes,
again,
another like perfect Simpsons gag.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or when he's like, we made the hypertube, and it's just like, it's a tunnel underground, like with neon lights on.
And you will die inside of it.
Yes. Yeah. Every time, I remember seeing just this hilarious video compilation of his stands who made videos of like, yep, I got the self-driving updated in it. Nope. Oh, it's okay. Got to put your hands back on the wheel sometimes. And all right, now I'm going to let it self-drive. And it's almost ran into that. Well, I still think it's really great though. Like just, it's incredible.
The classic Simpsons meme online I see of the from the Homer and Apu episode where Apu's jumping in front of James Woods to absorb the bullets. Apu is labeled weird nerds online, and James Woods is Elon Musk.
Yep.
In that classic meme.
Yeah, it's that is why this the biggest problem with this now is that this would not ruin anybody seemingly. But here, let's first hear the commercial for the Homer, a good parody of early 90s, late 80s luxury car commercials.
Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed stockholders, members of the press, Your Holiness, tonight we are going to witness automotive history.
All my life, I have searched for a car that feels a certain way. Powerful like a gorilla, yet soft and yielding like a Nerf ball. Now at last, I have found it.
Ladies and gentlemen, presenting the car designed for the average man, the Homer.
The squeaky turntable it's on or whatever platform, the squeakiness really highlights really just the deafening silence is what I like.
And a full 3D turnaround of the car too. And again, it does, as a little kid, I just thought it looked like an awesome car. Like it's kind of Batmobile-y as well. It has it's just a bunch of things shoved together that a child would like, of just, there's no true form to it. It's just ridiculous and covered in accessories. It's
the protruding
ugly.
hot rod engine, the bowling trophy front piece is very funny.
Yeah, that even when it's stuff that Homer didn't reference on screen, you can just imagine Homer said like, people don't have front pieces. The grills are too small these days. We got to make them bigger.
Yeah, I was zooming in on this during our conversation. I was like, what is the hood ornament? It's a little guy bowling, like on a bowling trophy.
Great. And that the horn is like an air horn on top of it. And the kids are in their own bubble. Like the back seat is a bubble all the way. Like, no. And again, when they say the car for the average man, designed for the average man, and it is impossibly expensive. Like you can't make a car like that. The average man couldn't afford it. When they say the price tag, I looked this up. Apparently in 1990, the average price for a new car was $15,000 of the average car that a person would get. Now an $80,000 car doesn't get you much. Like brand new, $80,000, you get an all right car. Like,
I was prepared for this joke to feel wildly out of date, like them saying something like it's completely unaffordable at $35,000. Which, is a lot of money, but for a car today it would not be that much. But honestly, $80,000 is a very credible, too expensive for the average car buyer price.
And I this is a quick clip. I love DeVito does such a great freak out here.
Any questions? What does this monstrosity cost?
Jerry, what's the sticker price? $82,000. This monstrosity cost $82,000. What have I done? I mean, the zoo was fun, but I'm ruined.
Oh, the smile on Homer's face when he beeps that car horn. That's good.
He should have at least looked behind the curtain before the unveiling or asked about the price.
So this is really where Herb feels like a total asshole to me as an adult, and he'll feel even worse in his sequel episode, which is he blames Homer for everything, which it's like, you did this. This was your fault. You could have looked at this car at any time. You could have checked in on it. You could have listened to anybody who warned you about these things, and you didn't.
Homer did exactly what you asked of him.
Yeah, Homer succeeded in the thing you wanted him to do, and then instead, like in the next episode, every time he sees Homer, he punches him because he's like, "You ruined my life. You destroyed everything." It's like, no, you did, you asshole. Like, how dare you blame someone else for this?
Well, this just proves Mr. Burns was correct in that family is one of the 3 demons you must slay to succeed in business.
Very true. Very true. But yes, I mean, what we know now is like this was made before we all knew the phrase too big to fail. Like, there have been many American car companies that weren't allowed to be ruined and sold off like DeVito did, or Herb does with Powell Motors. And
just a decade later, Powell Motors would totally have been bailed out for this.
Yeah, a big old check, just like blank check handed to him, and he could give himself and Homer a big bonus for their performance that year.
I have some very, very pointless trivia that I will waste people's time with. They're taken over by Komatsu Motors. We'll actually hear that later in Mr. Plow. That's who repossesses Homer's truck.
Yes.
Which I believe it's a Komatsu truck. So Mike Reese put this in the episode to reference a film that boomers saw a lot on TV in the 60s and 70s called Skinny and Fatty. It is a Japanese movie that was localized and just shown on TV a lot. And one of the characters' name is Komatsu, and the fatty character Oyama will yell Komatsu a lot in the movie. Actually, I put on the movie. It's on YouTube. I watched 2 minutes of it and it happened.
Oh,
so it happens a lot in the movie.
It's very quick.
So Mike Reese puts this in on the commentary. He's like, I was so proud of this, and none of my family and friends got it. And Jeff Martin corrects him. He's like, isn't it supposed to be Komatsu? And yes, it's Komatsu.
Yeah.
And yes, boomers have seen this a lot. Actually, a former girlfriend of mine, her mom would reference this. She would say Komatsu for no reason.
And
that's very funny.
I had never heard of Skinny and Fatty before. And me and you like Japanese films and anime and all that stuff. But yeah, until looking it up this time, I had not heard of Skinny and Fatty before. It's I don't think I'll be watching it because as a fat kid with one friend in growing up in school, I don't need to watch a movie about the fat kid and his one friend.
It's all on YouTube, and it's a black and white Japanese live action movie about kids.
1958 it came out, and called Chibideka Monogatari in Japanese.
Little Big Story.
Yeah. It's
just a good Reese reference of harkening back to a time when there were 3 networks, so everybody only had 20 cultural references.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes, we've all seen Skinny and Fatty, am I right?
Yeah. It played on NBC on one night and when you were 10, and we all watched it.
If Twitter was around in 1991, there'd be Skinny and Fatty memes on there.
Absolutely.
We should bring it back. Let's do the Skinny and Fatty fandom is dying. We need to revive it.
But that's so funny that Reese, that's also a pre-internet thing. Like Reese was like, I remember it being Komatsu, right? That, and then he finds out oh, it was Komatsu. Damn it. And again, I think about okay, did Herb mass produce these? Because then fine, then he made a bunch of cars they can't sell and they lost a bunch of money. But is he ruined just because this car is so ridiculous it made Powell Motors a laughing stock and ruined the company? Did it cause a vote of no confidence because he made this ridiculous car that nobody would buy? And then his board of directors were like, we're selling to Komatsu. We're not, you're out of here, buddy. But also then it's they say it on the commentary too. Where's his golden parachute? How does he leave with no money? Seemingly he owned that house. Sell that house. You have $8 million. Or if Komatsu bought your company, they bought your stocks, didn't they? Don't you have money from that? Where?
I mean, maybe it is we could assume that it is an Elon Musk situation where the entire company is built on leveraged debt. And if one thing goes wrong, if just the development costs alone of the Homer are enough to like knock out the bottom row of the House of Cards, and then like I don't know, his house was like mortgaged and put into the company to keep it afloat for another 2 months.
Yeah, I mean that also makes Herb even more of an asshole, because it's like Homer was the domino that felled it. Even if you could be mad that Homer made a bad car and it made him look bad, if he had a more stable company, it could easily survive one mistake like this.
Maybe her pal was like John DeLorean. He was trafficking cocaine, and Powell Motors was just the laundering operation for that.
So part of
drug
this
trade.
What not seen between scenes here is his like plea deal to get out of his drug trade. But yeah, so instead Herb just blames his brother for it, and but obviously they do this because they have to reset at the end of an episode. If the Simpson family just has a rich uncle that they can ask for help whenever they need it, then there's no problem. Like, you know, like their problems are all gone, so they have to get rid of this. So we have a honestly pretty sad ending here.
I can't help but think that maybe you would have been better off if I'd never come into your life.
Maybe I would have been better off. Maybe? Why, you spongehead? Of course I'd have been better off. As far as I'm concerned, I have no brother.
Well, maybe he just said that to make conversation.
His life was an unbridled success until he found out he was a Simpson.
I'm here! Now, where's that millionaire chip off the old block I call Sonny Boy?
Get in, Dad. I'll explain on the way home.
Oh, I knew you'd blow it.
Dad?
What is it, boy?
I thought your car was really cool.
Thanks, boy. I was waiting for someone to say that.
So Herb is so immediately financially devastated, he's got to take the bus away from his closed down company.
And he'll be a hobo the next time we see him. So if he loses what money he had in that suitcase there and his nice clothes there, he'll be like a 1930s homeless man by the next time we see him. I do love hearing DeVito just scream like, "You spongehead!" Like, that's...
the venom in his voice as he's like yelling at Homer is very good and well delivered by DeVito there.
And Homer just like, you know, if you take this, you know, too realistically, emotionally, Homer was just told by the brother he only just found out he had that Homer is dead to him, and he lost this deep connection that had him sobbing earlier in the episode. It's now dead, and he'll never have it again, and it's just, that's heartbreaking. And they said behind the scenes, James L. Brooks did not like this ending after all. He's like, oh, I don't like him leaving a failure. That they wish they could have written a scene where on the bus he was leaving on, Herb goes, wait, I got another great idea. And he's on to the next big idea, which is why they then had to write him getting his next big idea and being a success again for a sequel episode that also is very like hastily written feel to it with a lot of filler.
It's towards the end of the season.
Yeah, just like this one. But yeah, I wonder how late in the game that scene with Homer and Bart is, because I think they really did can we get at least one nice little moment? Like, all right, let's add like 6 seconds where Bart compliments Homer and Homer's like, thanks, boy. Like, but meanwhile, Lisa was doing her season 2 thing of saying the moral of the story.
Right.
Like that, with even that same sound cue, I think behind it was like when she said in Treehouse of Horror 1, after the aliens fly away, like, there were monsters on that ship and truly they were us.
I also like that Grandpa Simpson arrives in a cab and then gets mad enough, and instead of riding back with the family, gets back into the cab when it's really shown that it's like a road trip long enough for Marge to like sleep with a pillow on, which means that, I don't know, Grandpa Simpson's taking a $1,000 cab ride to and from Detroit.
It's the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air style cab ride.
Yes, yeah. Exactly. I love that Homer's like, get in, Dad, I'll tell you on the way. I knew you. And he just leaves. He's like, fuck you. You ruined it. I didn't get 1 second of the good life with my kid. But I also feel like if Herb punches Homer the next time he sees him, I feel like he'd murder Abe if he'd seen him in that moment. So probably it's good for Abe that he didn't run into Herb on that day.
Yeah, maybe Homer said, Dad is dead.
Yeah.
Don't ask about Dad.
Don't ask about Dad. Oh, it's so sad. He had a heart attack recently and died. That's how I learned about you. Anyway, right? Like, yeah. Yeah, it's too bad for Homer. He doesn't even get to keep the prototype of the Homer. Maybe he got sold off for parts to cover the remaining debts. I don't know.
And I think by the late 90s, you could buy the Hot Wheels version of this.
The 2013, they were selling it at San Diego Comic-Con. I think they made other ones, but when I looked up Homer car toys on eBay, mainly the 2013 and 2014 models were the ones coming up. There was also like a model kit, I think, made in the last decade of the Homer. Those were the only ones I saw. I think you would think in the Playmate set they would have made a Homer as well to sell, or the McFarlane toys run in the late 90s, early aughts. But in my little search on eBay, the first ones I saw were the 2013 and 14 Hot Wheels ones. Which again, $8 $8, get your own Hot Wheels in mint condition, still in box. Homer Hot Wheel.
I mean, it's a cool toy.
It would look good on anyone's desk.
Put it on a little turntable, a creaky turntable
that'd be great,
of your own.
It's a fun episode with a good guest star, but the closer you look at it, like it has a third act that has to make a million obvious mistakes to get to a final destination they have planned, and there's a lot of filler they fully cop to in the commentary. And I wish they'd have brought back DeVito more often, but I mean, it's not like the best season 2 episode, but there's worse ones in season 2.
Yeah, some part, I mean, it's a bit flawed. I think I would dislike it more if there wasn't a sequel and Herb didn't get his groove back. But yeah, it's a bit messy, but I do love DeVito so much. And again, like you said, Henry, I wish he came back more. They have this star player that they only use one other time, and just to right the wrongs from this episode. But it's still enjoyable.
Yeah, I mean, just dropping into this season randomly and watching a good early Simpsons episode, I totally enjoyed watching it. And it did also, from watching this and the previous one and just vibing out with Simpsons season 2, there, as I said at the beginning, there's like a kind of melancholy but also sweet but not saccharineness and like kind of slowness to the pacing of these episodes that I really appreciated, and makes the characters feel real and funny in a way that I haven't like thought about The Simpsons in a long time. So I definitely didn't have that many problems because I wasn't in it to nitpick, I guess. So
that's where we come in.
I just appreciated watching some good classic Simpsons. I felt like this was a good standard classic Simpsons ep.
So Chris, thanks for being on the show. Please let us know where you can find your podcast, including Chapo Trap House and Hell of Presidents, which you're on with Matt Chrisman, of course.
Yes, Chapo Trap House you can find anywhere podcasts are available, but if you want to subscribe, it's on patreon.com/Chapo Trap House. Hell of Presidents is available on Stitcher Premium. If you go to stitcherpremium.com/hell, you can start a free trial and start listening to all the episodes there. I'll also plug that I do a podcast with my wife, Molly, called And Introducing, which is about music and musicians. We typically listen to or read an artist's memoir or a book about music, or even just a long article and interview, and kind of talk about the musician's career and their place in pop culture and listen to their songs, and just generally try to appreciate and look at a wide swath of different kinds of musicians and bands. And that's And Introducing, also available. All episodes, always free, no ads, wherever you get podcasts.
Awesome, man! With your music expertise, the next time if you'd like to come back, we got to pick a music-centric episode for you. That'd be a good one.
I mean, I don't know how you guys do this, but I haven't watched it yet. I would be interested in watching that Morrissey episode.
Oh, that's that's a little out of our order, but it is, as somebody who grew up liking the Smiths to the normal amount of a gay teenager would in the 90s. I did like that episode about how it feels to like Morrissey as a kid and then realize he's a garbage person as you get older.
That could be a Talking Simpsons special, because no one will hate us if we don't wait until 2043 to cover that one.
Yeah, we might have to wait till then if not, but yeah.
But if not, also, I would love to come and talk about the Lollapalooza episode, which I think is a little closer in your order, though that I imagine that also might be a few years out.
But we will keep both of these in mind, Chris. But I'm sure we will have you back sooner than later. That's for darn sure. So this was so much fun.
Thanks, guys.
So thanks again to Chris Wade for being on the show. Check out his podcast, Chapo Trap House, and also the Stitcher Premium podcast, Hell of Presidents, and also his podcast and introducing a lot of podcasts for him. But as for us, if you want to check out more of what we do and get all these episodes 1 week ahead of time and ad-free, please go to patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. Sign up for $5 a month to get just that, but also access to everything behind the $5 paywall. That includes over 100 episodes of our miniseries, our exclusive miniseries, but also coming very, very soon at the end of October, we're going to be launching Blabbing About Batman the Animated Series, our exclusive 10-episode podcast about our favorite episodes of Batman the Animated Series, only behind the $5 paywall, only at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. Find it there. And also, we have a $10 level. If you sign up for that, you get all the $5 stuff, plus also access to one Megalon podcast once a month, only for patrons of that level or higher. And what is that, Henry?
Bob is discussing the What a Cartoon movie podcast. We have a sister podcast called What a Cartoon, where twice a month we cover an animated series super in depth, and we also do the same for animated feature films. But only at the premium level can you hear the often over 4 hours, sometimes over 5 hour long podcast about films like this month's Batman Beyond: Return of the Joker. We're getting real Batman-y on the Patreon this month. And before that, we did a full summer of the Disney Renaissance. If you liked hearing this talk about DeVito here, we talked a shitload about him in the 1997 Hercules podcast we did. Check out a giant back catalog of almost 3 years worth, over 170 hours of What a Cartoon movie podcasts, in addition to all of the $5 stuff Bob mentioned. If you go up to that $10 level at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons today.
So I've been one of your hosts, Bob Mackey. You can find me on Twitter as Bob Servo, and my other podcast is Retronauts. That's a classic gaming podcast about old video games. Find that wherever you find podcasts, or go to patreon.com/Retronauts. Sign up there for 2 full-length bonus episodes every month. Henry, what about you?
You can follow me on Twitter at HENEREYG. Stay up to date on the life of Henry Gilbert by following me there. And if you're on Twitter following me and Bob, you should also be following the official Twitter account of this podcast at Talk Simpsons Pod.